"Get away from that horse," the Duke of Brackenridge said, "before he kills you, and I am obliged to explain to your father why I let a guest be trampled in my own yard." Cordelia Hawthorne did not get away from the horse. She didn't even turn around. She kept her eyes on the great black stallion that had backed itself into the corner of the paddock, ears pinned, nostrils flaring, sweat darkening its heaving flanks, a magnificent, furious animal that 2 grooms had already failed to bridle that morning, and that Duke himself, by the look of his torn coat sleeve, had not fared much better with. "He will not kill me," Cordelia said, "unless you keep shouting. You are frightening him." "I am." The Duke of Brackenridge, a tall, formidable man not accustomed to being contradicted in his own stable yard, came to the paddock rail and gripped it. "Madam, that animal has thrown every man who has tried him. He nearly broke my master of horse's arm last week. He is unrideable. I am selling him to the knacker on Thursday, because he is a danger to everyone who comes near him." "You are selling him to the knacker," Cordelia said slowly, still not turning, her voice pitched low, and even for the horse's benefit, "because no one in this yard has thought to ask him what is wrong. There is always something wrong. A horse does not behave so out of wickedness. He behaves so out of fear or pain, and a gentleman who cannot tell the difference has no business owning horses at all." The silence behind her was thunderous. Cordelia knew exactly whom she had just insulted, and she found she did not much care. She had come to Brackenridge against her own wishes, dragged by a father who hoped the proximity of an unmarried duke might do for the family fortunes what her father's own poor judgment had failed to, and she had expected to be bored and overlooked and obliged to simper at a cold man. She had not expected to walk out at dawn to clear her head and find a beautiful animal being broken in spirit by men too proud to understand it. She had grown up in the saddle. It was the one thing her shabby genteel girlhood had given her in abundance: horses, and time alone with them, and the particular wordless conversation that passes between a frightened animal and a person patient enough to listen. She was, though no drawing room in England would have valued the accomplishment, very possibly the finest horsewoman in 3 counties. "Open the gate," she said, "and then stand back and be quiet, and let me show you what is wrong with your unrideable horse." The Duke of Brackenridge ought to have refused. He told himself afterward that he could not say why he did not, why he found himself, against every instinct, lifting the latch and stepping back and falling silent, watching a young woman in a plain riding habit walk slowly, toward an animal that had injured grown men. She did not approach the stallion directly. She moved an angle, her body soft, her eyes lowered, murmuring something too low to hear. She stopped well short of him and simply stood breathing, until the horse's pinned ears flicked once, twice, toward the new sound that was not a threat. She waited. The Duke, gripping the rail, found he was holding his breath. It took the better part of an hour. The sun climbed. The grooms gathered silently at the rail. Word spread, and other servants drifted out to watch. And inch by patient inch, Cordelia Hawthorne talked a furious, terrified animal down out of his fear, until at last the great black head dropped, and the stallion took one trembling step toward her, and lipped at her open palm, and let her finally lay a hand upon his sweating neck. "There," she said softly, "there. I told you, you are not wicked. You are only afraid." She ran her hand down his shoulder, his foreleg lifting at last the near forehoof, and went very still. "Your Grace," she called, not loudly. "Come and see." Slowly. The Duke came slowly. He bent where she pointed. There, wedged deep beneath the shoe, half grown over, was a stone, a sharp flint that must have driven its agony into the animal with every stride a rider asked of him. "He is not unrideable," Cordelia said. "He is in pain, and every man who climbed onto his back made the pain worse, and so he learned that men mean suffering. That is all. Draw the shoe, ease the stone, give him a fortnight's rest and a kind hand, and you will have the finest horse in your stable." She straightened, and at last she turned and looked the Duke of Brackenridge full in the face. "You were going to send him to the knacker for the crime of hurting." The Duke of Brackenridge looked at her for a long moment. He was, Cordelia saw now that she could see him properly, younger than his reputation, perhaps 35, with a hard, handsome face and dark eyes that were just now regarding her with an expression that was equal parts affront and something else entirely, something like wonder. "Who are you?" he said. "Cordelia Hawthorne. My father is your guest. I believe I am meant to be charming you in the drawing room." She wiped her hands on her habit. "I am afraid I am better with horses." A muscle moved in the Duke's jaw. "So I see," he said. "Miss Hawthorne, I have owned horses my whole life. I have been called the best judge of horseflesh in the North. And I was about to destroy a sound animal because I was too proud to look beneath his shoe." He glanced at the great black head now nuzzling at her shoulder. "I do not know whether to thank you or to resent you. At present I find I am doing both." "You may do both," Cordelia said. "I find I am quite used to gentlemen who cannot decide how to feel about a woman who knows more than they do." She expected him to bristle. Instead, astonishingly, the corner of his hard mouth moved. "Yes," he said. "I imagine you are." And he bowed to her, there in the muck of his own stable yard, lower than any gentleman had ever bowed to shabby Cordelia Hawthorne in a drawing room, and walked away before she could see his face. After that there was war between them, of the particular kind that is not war at all. The Duke of Brackenridge, it transpired, did not do anything by halves. Having been shown up by a guest, he set about the business of being shown up properly. He sought her out at the breakfast table and disputed her methods. He challenged her claims and was proved wrong and disputed the next ones. He took to riding out at the hours he knew she rode, and matched her over the fields, and discovered to his visible astonishment that she could match him, that the shabby genteel Miss Hawthorne sat a horse as though she had been born in the saddle, took the hedges he took, never once asked him to slow, and laughed at him openly, when his own mount refused a ditch that hers had cleared. "You are insufferable," he told her, reining in beside her on a high ridge with the whole green county spread below them and both their horses blowing. "I am honest," Cordelia said. "You confuse the two because no one is ever honest with you. They are too busy being charming." "And you are not charming?" "I am told I am the very opposite of charming. I am told it is why I am 24 and unwed and a burden to my father." She said it lightly, but the Duke heard what lay under it, and his face changed. "Your father," he said, "is a fool, and I have known him 3 days. Charming." He shook his head. "I have been charmed by experts, Miss Hawthorne, since I was old enough to inherit. I have been flattered and managed and courted by every accomplished young woman in the North and bored beyond endurance by all of them. And then you walked into my stable yard and told me I had no business owning horses." He looked at her, and the hardness was all gone out of his face now, leaving something open and uncertain that did not suit a duke, and suited this man entirely. "Do you know, it is the first true thing anyone has said to me in years. I find I cannot stop wanting to hear the next one." Cordelia's heart, which she had kept under stern command for 24 years, did something insubordinate. "That is a foolish thing to want," she said. "I am full of unflattering opinions. I shall only go on telling you when you are wrong." "I know," said the Duke of Brackenridge. "It is the only thing I have ever wanted that I cannot buy. A woman who will tell me when I am wrong, and ride beside me when I am right, and never once mistake me for my title." His horse shifted. He steadied it without looking. "I had a stallion once that everyone said was unrideable. A clever woman showed me he had only been misjudged. I have been thinking, these 3 days, that I have been rather like that horse, and that I have been waiting all my life for someone with the patience to look beneath the shoe." The whole green county lay below them. A hunt was forming in the distance, horns faint on the wind, but neither of them turned toward it. "That," said Cordelia unsteadily, "was very nearly charming, Your Grace." "I am learning," said the Duke. "I have an excellent teacher. She is unsparing." And he reached across the small distance between their 2 horses and took her gloved hand, and held it, and Cordelia let him, there on the high ridge with the wind in the mains and the great black stallion, and gentle, the horse she had saved, grazing easily in the meadow far below. They were married in the autumn, and all the north came to wonder at it. The cold Duke of Brackenridge, who could have had any accomplished beauty in England, wed to shabby Miss Hawthorne, who cared nothing for fashion, and said exactly what she thought, and was, by universal and slightly scandalized agreement, the finest horsewoman anyone had ever seen. She brought no fortune and no connections and not one single charming accomplishment. She brought only herself, which the Duke had decided, with the absolute certainty of a man who had at last found the one true thing, was worth more than all the rest of it together. They rode out together every morning of their married life, over the hedges and the ditches, matching one another stride for stride, the Duke and the Duchess of Brackenridge, and more often than not, the great gentle black stallion that had brought them together, the horse no one could ride, gentled by the woman no one had wanted, both of them seen at last by a man who had finally learned to look beneath the shoe. And on the high ridge where he had first taken her hand, the Duke would sometimes stop and look at his wife with the wind in her hair and no charm about her at all, and tell her she was the most unsparing, insufferable, beloved creature in all of England, and Cordelia would tell him, honestly, that he was wrong, that she could be a great deal more insufferable yet, and he would throw back his head and laugh, the cold man warmed clean through, and race her home.